One of the major research questions for my lab is trying to understand how GLP-1 receptor agonists work in the brain to reduce food intake and body weight. My name is Amber Alhadeff, and I'm a principal investigator at the Monell Center, and my lab studies gut-brain communication and the neural control of feeding behavior. My lab is interested in the basic neural circuits that mediate food intake control. Ultimately, we're really interested in looking at cures and treatments for diseases like obesity and type 2 diabetes. But before we get that far, it's really important to understand the basic science behind these diseases. And so my lab not only looks at brain mechanisms for treatments, but also looks at the very basic neural circuits, basic neural mechanisms that control how we eat, and why we make our food choices every day. We eat every day, multiple times a day, but we still don't have a full understanding of how the brain and the body control this eating behavior. When I was an undergraduate, I was pre-med. I was really interested in science, and I wanted to go to medical school. And so I needed a lab to get some research experience. And I thought to myself, what am I interested in studying? I love food. I love to eat. I'm also a runner, and so nutrition is very important to me. I decided to study why we eat, how we eat, what controls our feeding behavior. I looked up people at the University of Pennsylvania, where I was an undergraduate, who study this topic. And I came across PI, Harvey Grill. I cold emailed him, and he said, come join the team, and the rest was history. Within a couple months, I thought, medical school is probably not for me, and this is actually what I want to do. I really loved how every day was so creative. We could think of one thing, discuss it in lab meeting, come up with a plan, and test these hypotheses the next day. So it was a very exciting and engaging time for me. I did all of my training at the University of Pennsylvania, and so I've known about Monell for my whole career. And I knew that Monell focuses on sensory science, which is, how we taste, how we smell, how our body responds to chemicals in our environment. And when I started my lab, I thought it would be a great place to study interoception, or this gut-brain communication, how the kinds of foods we eat are detected in the body and how this information is communicated to the brain. Interoception is really the ability for the body to sense what's going on in its internal environment and communicate this to the brain to coordinate physiological functions. Monell is very supportive of the research that I want to pursue. And not only am I personally supportive, but I'm surrounded by a lot of colleagues as well as the scientists in their lab that are pursuing very complementary questions. So this makes Monell a very fun environment to do science in. Unlike a traditional department, we are all focused here at Monell on similar topics. So we're all interested in some way in sensory science. And this is really exciting, and it makes doing science very interesting, because what that means is that there's people who are interested in the same topic but approaching it from different angles. So my lab does basic neuroscience research, but we have colleagues who are doing more molecular research in cell culture, research in human subjects, and putting that all together is really what we need to advance the research questions. The research environment here at Monell really shapes the science that's done here, because we have a very interactive community. And so when we get stuck on a certain question, there's people just down the hall who can help us. There's also many opportunities for collaboration that may not have existed had we not been in a center that's all focused around the same research goal. I think probably what I care the most about is doing research that will benefit the lives of many people. For example, we're very interested in understanding how drugs that promote weight loss work in the brain. One of the goals of my lab is to really understand the neural mechanisms through which these weight loss drugs are so effective at reducing food intake and reducing body weight. I think everyone benefits from the research that's being done in my lab and also at Monell. We all eat. We all eat every day. And so we can all benefit for understanding how the different kinds of foods we eat are detected in the body and how they impact the brain and therefore our behavior. One of my favorite parts of the job is mentoring students and postdocs in my lab. I have a lot of different kinds of trainees in my lab, from high school students to college students to postbacks to graduate students to postdocs. And I find mentoring and training these students really to be one of the most rewarding parts of my career. This is really why I enjoy being a PI. I can also talk about the MSAP program if you want, because I think that's like one of the most amazing things that Monell does. The Monell Center has been running the MSAP program, the Monell Science Apprenticeship Program, for decades now. And I think this is one of the most important things that our institute does for the community. The MSAP program is where we bring in high school and college students from the local area, and we give them firsthand experience in research where they are a trainee in our labs doing primary research for 8 weeks of the summer. And this program has been really influential to the lives of many young students in the Philadelphia area. At the end of the 8-week apprenticeship, there's a capstone symposium where students present their research in a 10-minute research talk. And I'm always blown away by the kind of research that these high school and college students are doing right here at Monell. This has been a really exciting time to be studying the neural control of feeding behavior. Over the course of my career, I've really seen the field evolve. We have a lot of people in our country and across the world who have diseases that are rooted in metabolic control. And what we've also seen is an explosion of obesity medications in the last 4 or 5 years. And so it's been very exciting to be a part of that, because this is one of the research topics that my lab is extremely interested in, and to see the field grow over the last several years. One of the major research questions for my lab is trying to understand how GLP-1 receptor agonists work in the brain to reduce food intake and body weight. My lab is really interested in understanding where these drugs act in the brain and what kinds of neural mechanisms they initiate in order to have these effects on energy balance. We're at a very critical time for metabolic research right now. We've had increasing obesity rates over the past several decades, and now we are starting to find really effective treatments. So what excites me the most right now is that we're at this nexus, we're at this inflection point. And so now all of our basic research can really be leveraged into translational research. One of our lab's most recent findings is that there's different neural mechanisms in the brain that mediate different effects of GLP-1 drugs. So for example, we showed that the neural mechanisms that make you feel full are distinct from those that make you feel sick, because the majority of people who take GLP-1 drugs experience nausea, and some also experience vomiting. And so what this means is that we may in the future be able to better target GLP-1 drugs towards the neural circuits that make you feel full and away from the neural circuits that make you feel nauseated, so that we have drugs that are better tolerated and better promote weight loss without people feeling sick. Basic science experiments are really necessary to show these kinds of effects, because we need to be able to tease apart the neural mechanisms. What I'm most proud of about my research is that we believe that it will be helping many individuals who are struggling with metabolic diseases, obesity, type 2 diabetes, these diseases that are really rooted in energy balance control. Last week, I was at the National Academy of Sciences Frontiers of Science Symposium, where I was an organizer, and I was really excited to represent Monell there. This is a symposium that brings together scientists across all disciplines, including neuroscience, but also things like molecular biology, earth sciences, astronomy. It really spans the range of science. And it was a great opportunity to represent Monell and talk about the kinds of science that we're doing to scientists across all disciplines. If you're interested in improving the human condition, then Monell is worth investing in, because all of the science we're doing here is really designed to uncover the mysteries of sensory science in order to improve human health.